So we're moving along with this thing. Spent the last couple of days getting the heads together, rounding up hardware. I didn't want to cannibalize the old motor that came out of this. I wanted it to be just a drop-in replacement for this car or any of our others, you know, should I need it. And since it was complete, I figured, let's not take anything off of that. Let's do all fresh stuff here. So, very time consuming, rounding up all of the hardware, nuts, bolts, brackets, odds and ends. But we're getting there. Only thing left I have to do with the actual engine itself is clean the rocker shafts and the rockers and get that together, and the actual motor itself is buttoned up. Time consuming. I've spent, I mean, I can't tell you, probably 15 or 20 hours at the wire wheel. I know right away, oh, use an ultrasonic cleaner, use this. I hear all you guys in the comment section. I do things a certain way because that's how I like to do them. I give stuff a quick douse in gasoline, or I've got a parts cleaner at the house, I'll use that. And then I take it to the wire wheel and I clean them on the wire wheel. And the reason for that is simple. If you just mass wash everything, mass clean everything, you never really get to inspect it all, right? When I'm doing bolts for one of these engines, I'll have each of them over at the wheel, and I can see I'm actually handling each bolt. I become intimate with each thread. I know the condition of the bolt before it whereas when you're just cleaning a handful of stuff, you know, it's a handful, you know, boom, you throw it in. I like to go each individual piece and examine each individual piece. In fact, the last time we did the engine for Bottle Rocket over here, I found a cracked rocker shaft, which I wouldn't have found if I had just douched everything down real quick and then thrown it in the engine. So that's how we're at this. Very time consuming, but we're moving forward. Other things that took time, I had to modify this spacer a little bit. This manifold requires a spacer because it has an open ledge here that the carburetor overhangs, the idle circuitry overhangs, so it requires a spacer. Had to modify this a little bit to better fit the intake manifold. I'm going to have to make a bracket to extend the throttle linkage about just about an inch to meet the 4-barrel, because it's a 2-barrel bracket. And the same thing with the kickdown linkage. I'm going to have to extend the kickdown linkage to meet the longer distance for the 4-barrel. But she's just about there. One of the real-time consumers coming up on this is going to be the air conditioning. I'm going to go through the whole AC system. We're using all the original parts, but they've all been open for a long time, so I'm going to go through the compressor and make sure that that's all good before it goes together. I am going to try to light the motor, this motor, over the next day or two. By Sunday, I think she should be running. Now, one of the things I wanted to show you guys, talk about, is a distributor, which is, here it is. So, when we were laying out the engine, I was explaining how I wanted to use an open chamber head, and I didn't advance the cam because I didn't want to run into a situation where I had too much static cylinder pressure. I wanted to keep the compression ratio down in the 9-to-1 range, rather than, you know, go for the traditional, oh, it's a hot rod, right? You know, lots of squeeze. Here's the reason I'm doing that. I wanted to keep the compression conservative because I want to get very aggressive with the ignition timing. So this is the distributor we're using on this car. It's a stock distributor, and we're going to modify this. So what we want is approximately, we want between 32 and 34 degrees total advance in by about 2,000, 2,100, 2,200 RPM. So basically just light cruising speed, we want 34 degrees. And we don't want to wait for it. We want this thing to have 15 or 20 degrees right off idle. So it's got that punch to it. You guys, a lot of you guys will build engines, you'll put a cam in it, carburetor, you'll do all of these things, headers, and you wonder why this thing won't even squeak the tires. But it's usually because you don't have the distributor set up right. So here's what we're doing with this. This is the distributor we're using. It's a stock Chrysler distributor. And you can see on the Chrysler, they have the advanced weights mounted under the breaker plate. Like on you guys with GM HEIs and whatnot, GM distributors are lucky because you've got all of this right up top. You can make changes on the fly. With the Chrysler, it's a little more difficult. So these are the centrifugal advanced weights, and these are the slots that limit it. And these slots account for approximately, ballpark, 20 degrees of total advance. So essentially, if I'm going to time this thing so that I've got 34 degrees total, it means that I can only have 14 degrees initial. Well, I want more like 20 degrees initial, 22 degrees initial. So basically, as soon as I start the car, I want that right there. Right off idle, I want 20 degrees. I don't want to have to wait for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to weld these weights. We're going to weld that slot halfway. And what we're going to do this, we're going to do it with the weights in the fully advanced position. So basically, we're going to put a little piece of weld right there where that pin is sitting right now. And that's going to limit the amount. So if we want 34 degrees, if let's say we limit it to a total of, let's say, 15 degrees, 12 degrees, like that, that'll give us our initial, so the car's snappy right off the bat as soon as you touch the throttle. A lot of you guys, you'll do the basic hot rod stuff. You know, you put a carburetor on it, you put an intake manifold, headers, even a cam, but you wonder why the car won't even squeak the tires. And it's usually because you don't have the distributor set up right. You don't have enough advance in there. It's not coming in quickly enough. So we're going to limit the amount of advance so that we've got more initial and we don't exceed our 32, 34 total. And we want that 32, 34 total to be in there by, let's say, no later than like 1800 to 2000 RPM, or basically cruising speed. So what we're going to do is, you can see here, there's two springs. There's a heavy spring right here and a light spring here. So we're going to eliminate the heavy spring altogether. We're just going to take that thing out of there. And the light spring, we're going to stretch that a little bit so that these weights are just going to fly right open. As soon as the motor starts, these things will start moving outward. And you know, the reason why, okay, on like a hot rod engine, I would just lock it out completely. It's 32 degrees, 34 degrees, pump the gas 3-4 times, hold it a quarter way down, bang, it starts, and you've got all your lead right at idle. That makes for a snappy beast of an engine. But daily driver, and it's going to see hot days, it's going to see traffic, it's going to see heat soak, it's going to see all sorts of things that are going to make it want to fight back against the starter if there's that much advance. And so that's why, instead of locking it out, we're going to give ourselves that 10-15 degrees, so it'll start easily at, let's say, 20, and then bam, shoot right to our target. And our target will be at a low RPM, so that this thing will have all of its advance in at 1800, 2000. You could put it on a distributor machine and curve it in a whole bit, but I've been doing it like this my entire life, and it works just fine. There's no real crazy science to getting good results out of this. You can do it at home. So, and like I said, if you got any other type of distributor, especially the GM cars, like I said, nice and easy. The advanced weights are right up here, and they make different types of weights. They make different size weights, they make different limiters, they make different, different spring kits. So it's much easier to tune those distributors than it is these Chryslers. But that's the game with that. And mating to this, we're going to use a probably an actual a blaster coil, MSD blaster. We usually use the big yellow coils. I love those things, right? They give you about 45,000 volts, but because we're trying to keep this thing as like stock and kind of like where things are supposed to be, I want a round coil mounted in the right place on this, so we'll use the blaster coil on that, and that'll give us our 40,000 volts. And the reason we need 40,000 volts, approximately that much, is because we're going to run wide gaps. We're not going to run like the standard 35,000s. We're going to go to like a 45,000s gap, and that's so that we can run a leaner mixture. And especially here too, we're going to be using a vacuum advance on this. Now normally on a performance engine, I don't use vacuum advance at all, because vacuum advance is an economy thing. What it does is, at light cruising speeds, light throttle, when there's a lot of manifold vacuum available, ported vacuum, a lot of engine vacuum, it adds another 15 degrees or so of advance. And it's, like I said, it's a fuel economy thing. As soon as you touch the throttle, it doesn't even exist anymore. It goes back to zip, and you're running strictly on the centrifugal advance. So, but again, because this is a daily driver, an economy build, we're going to be incorporating that vacuum advance. That vacuum advance requires, with small plug gaps, requires a relatively rich mixture, low speed mixture. We're going to lean that as much as we can, so that's why we need that wider gap to fire that lean mixture. So I'm going to get back to cranking on this thing, and hopefully within the next day or two we've got an actual running engine, and we should be able to take it out for her first spin early this week coming. So that's it. I'll see you tomorrow.